You can cry about it and say, woe is me, and be punished by doing nothing, or you can do something about it. You have that freedom, and to not give up. There's always a better way. You give me a room with 12 doors, and they all seem locked, I will have tried them all. There's always a way to make a change. We have the ability to effectuate incredible change and dynamic change and useful change and harmful change. Justice heals. If you can put someone on a path to feeling that they are in the right in society, they do better.
Welcome back, everyone, to episode 12 of the Molding You podcast. I am more than honored to be joined by Robert Mckee. Bob, thank you for being here.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
And if you've listened to my other podcasts, I've mentioned Bob on probably at least half of them.
Those poor people.
Yeah, because we met in Texas, which was kind of random, and I drove out there to meet with Christina with Just Well Law at the Safe Housing Collaborative, and I bumped into you, and we just started chatting, and I have a background in environmental law. That's what I studied, and you were very much an environmental lawyer, essentially, right?
Yeah, quite frankly, Christina was one of my clients.
Yeah. And you both have incredible stories, but basically you were the attorney of the attorney that I looked up to, Christina, and I very much look up to both of you now. But I'd love for you to kind of share your story, and I feel you're one of the most interesting guys I've ever met. You had a profound impact on me in Texas, and it turns out you live right down the street from me here in South Florida. But would you be able to share your story of kind of how you got to where you are now?
Sure. It starts with, I never liked lawyers. I never wanted to be a lawyer. I was a nurseryman, a producer of ornamental plants, a landscape contractor and designer. And one night on Christmas Eve, 1989, we got down to 19 degrees in South Florida, and everything in my 47 acres was killed that night. I put a gun in my mouth and I fired it. Somehow I woke up, I missed, put a hole through the ceiling, laughed on Christmas morning and said, oh, what a frickin' idiot I am. I went outside to my big sign and with an orange spray paint can, for sale. I said, it's 3 years to regrow everything and 3 years to go to law school, so I never have to hire a freaking lawyer in my business. So I went to law school. I was finishing it early, a full semester early, and didn't really want to be a practicing lawyer. But my daughter at the time, her best friend's father was a state senator and had his own plaintiff's practice, and they took me out to lunch. And I said, it sounds interesting. And they had a case against DuPont, a chemical case of plant damage. And here I am, a nurseryman, and it's right up my alley. So they asked me to help them with that case as I graduated from law school, and then spent the next 2.5 years of my life fighting DuPont, winning all of our trials, and eventually settling all of our cases for a lot of money that my partners reaped, and I was still just an associate, and I got a nice little bonus. But it taught me that for those harmed by others, especially in chemicals and in microbes, that I was particularly trained and attuned for that. And so we went on to the BP oil spill eventually and other chemical cases. And I've always enjoyed doing the science work of those cases. I, to this day, don't call myself so much a lawyer as someone who can simplify complex things and have my client's viewpoint understood. And my clients are always the harmed one. I don't like to use the word victim. If they're smart, they're never victims, but they can be harmed grievously. And so that's all I ever worked for, and stayed in that firm for a long time until I met my wife-to-be, and she and I went on to our own, which is basically for chemically and microscopically exposed people to organisms that can affect them. And that's all I do. is exposure cases.
Yeah, it's such a powerful story, especially how you went from kind of a rock bottom place, right? To all of a sudden you're in law school and you never planned to be a lawyer. So you said just so you wouldn't need a lawyer.
Well, it was a little more than that, because that night, I'm a survivor. I'm a fighter. And for me to have put a shotgun in my mouth that night and pulled the trigger and missed. I'm a really good shot, by the way. I'm a big game hunter. Always have been since childhood. And clearly I didn't want to die psychologically. It wouldn't let me do it. But many of my clients are suicidal, so I understand them very well. They call it an act of depression. No, it's an act of aggression. I'm not going to take this crap anymore from anybody. And I can see and hear my clients that they're very upset with what happened to them, and they don't want to harm anyone else. And so they think that may be a way out. It's a bad way out, because I can tell you, as somebody who was a millisecond away from blowing my brains out, I've had such an effect in this world on how business is done, how chemicals are done, how people live, that had I made the bad connection that night, after seeing my crops die, a lot of change would not have occurred but for me surviving it. And so I always tell my clients, suicide is one way to go. It's just dumb. You will effectuate great change because of this state you're in if you survive it. So survive it with me. And so we work to survive bad mental status, and show them that there's a way out. And that's mainly why I'm a lawyer. I'm not in it to make a living. I've done that already. I'm in it because of the frustration of living and feeling like you can't do well. You can do well. It's up to you to do well and to be a difference maker in your own family, in your community, even in the world, if you have that kind of good fortune to affect more than just your local community. And it can be done. It just takes focus and to not give up. There's always a better way. You give me a room with 12 doors and they all seem locked, I will have tried them all. There's always a way to make a change. And that's what I do as a lawyer. And if I'm only doing law, I'm failing my clients and I'm failing society. I want people to be healthy and well. And most of it is located, as Bobby Jones said 100 years ago, in that 6 inches between your ears. It's all done in your brain.
Yeah, I've always been on a similar path of wanting to help people. I mean, that's always been my passion. And I used to be very, I am very science minded. I always loved science, environmental science and policy, all that. But I realized that, without the law, we can't effectuate a lot of the science, right? I mean, there's only so much we can do with science if the law doesn't support it, or if the judicial system doesn't buy into the science, then it's almost worthless, right?
If you're just practicing law. Right. But if you're making a difference, you're doing more than law and not being bound by those strictures. Because the reality is, science shows us that we are 99.999997% non-matter. Doesn't leave a whole lot for this, the body. 0.00003% of you is matter. And therefore your mind and your thought process is the environment that you mainly need to work in. And that doesn't have anything to do with what anyone or anything else thinks about what you're doing. If you're compelled to make a change, you can do it with that energy, which makes up your basic fundamental atom structure.
Yeah, so we're mostly empty space between the electrons and the...
I don't think that's empty space. I think that's energetic space. There is no fixed rotation of electrons. Only the nucleus is fixed, and that's the 0.00003. Everything else is an energy field. And the fact that I don't go into you is an amazing thing of nature, because mentally it's what should happen, because you're almost not matter. But what makes it all work is right here. And in believing that you can change anything. You have that capacity. How you feel, how you get well, how you can cause harm, how you can make it better for yourself and everyone else that surrounds you. Those are all options you have. And I personally don't think there's a good or bad in that. It's what is it that you're willing to focus on? And goodness and badness is based on our upbringing, what we believe in our belief system. Wiping out all of the cities of the world due to global increase in sea levels because of how we behave may be conceived as very bad. But if it makes new cities that are built on better foundations with little loss of life, as many proponents would say needs to happen, maybe that's a good thing, but it caused great misery for an awful lot of people. What's good and bad? It's kind of your perspective. I believe in right and wrong. Good and bad is kind of interesting based on what happens through history.
Yeah, so much important stuff to talk about with mindset, but I know first you have a very sciencey background, right? Was it double major in chemistry, or I know you told me.
I'm a Bachelor of Science in Agriculture. I wanted to be a surgeon, but didn't know how to pay for it, and was on my own as of 19 years old. And so I went into this field of horticulture, agriculture. And then when I got wiped out that Christmas Eve night, it was a decision time. And the first decision was wrong, actually thinking I should just kill myself. The second decision, which was much better a few hours later, was selling the place, going to law school, and seeing if I could make a difference for myself, my family, and eventually those who would become my clients, who are grievously ill usually.
You put a lot of focus into knowing the science, the chemistry, and I think that's why you win or settle a lot of cases, right? Because not every attorney knows the science like you do.
I have some degree of modesty, not much, but I truly believe I'm one of maybe 10 people in the world. I truly believe I'm one of maybe 10 people in the world who really focuses on the legal system and how it can implement change by science. Science can be wrong, but much of it is based on what has already been learned. The science of illness is really not well understood, although even pharmaceutical companies are asking to make medicines of placebos, because the placebo worked to effectuate a positive change in the person. And so it's a clear evidence that our minds are what heal us, not our medicines. And the medicines might make us think we're healing, but you can do it without the medicine for the most part. It's that focus on the energy of life that keeps us alive. And that's what I like to do in law as well. Focus on what makes you get better. I want my clients all to be well. I don't want them to be suicidal. I don't want them to feel like they're trapped in a body that never can get well. I believe everybody can get well. Every body can get well. Every mind can get well, if you give them that opportunity and that pathway of education, and then the upbeat optimism to see it happening. Even myself, I can remember when I had hip replacement, they damaged my femoral nerve, and I could not move my leg up at all, not a millimeter, no matter how hard I thought. But with effort, I now can lift it without any difficulty. It took 2 years, but it's saying, I will get well. And that's what needs to be the mindset of everyone, whether it be mental illness, if you can focus with prompting, or physical illness, you can get well. We happen to have a civil justice system that makes a wrongdoer pay for it. They pay to help get you well, because you're entitled to be where you were before they cause you harm. But that system doesn't make you well. It's your investment of your mind and your soul in getting well that makes you well.
So I'm curious, is if you went back to Christmas Eve when you were looking to end things, what would you have told yourself then? Is that what you would have said, that it's all
Be a better
mindset?
shot, because I missed. But it woke me up. Actually, I passed out. A few hours later, I woke up on Christmas Day and said what a freaking idiot I was. And then I decided to change my course of thinking. And that process has been an evolution over time, even more so now. The older that I get, the more I see that our conscious choice affects the whole world, even one person, because invention is part of what we do as humans. And isn't it interesting if you do the studies? For example, Alexander Graham Bell invented the telephone. No, there was another inventor on the same day that made an application from across the country. They never had contact with each other for the same invention. The inventiveness of humanity, I think, is in the universe and not in our brains. And we find it in our thought processes. And usually necessity is the mother of invention, and that's the same with health. If you need it, you can find a path. And whether it be legal help or medical help, the first step is your own recognition that you can effectuate change in yourself and others around you.
And do you think greatness always stems from this really dark rock bottom place? Like every great story starts with someone who was like basically gave up or was close to giving up.
I think there's inventiveness that doesn't need trauma and tragedy to push them. But I'd say a large part of inventiveness was necessity. And necessity is sometimes the frustration of having a dead end, and that we then become more than ourselves. We find a new path. We find a new door. We find the energy and oh, gee whiz, somebody else just helped me. Somebody that was never in my life. And that when we use ourselves as a community, we are even more able to be inventive and supportive of each other.
Yeah, so I like how you talk about how you're an attorney, but you're more than an attorney to your clients. Would you say, I mean, I would describe it as kind of like a mentor, or maybe even like a father type position? Or what would you describe?
That's an interesting question, because I have various accusations ranging from my wife's own thoughts on that. Most of my clients are women. And there may be some biological reasons of why they're ill from exposures, especially to microbes, that many men never have that problem. But the issue of being of assistance is kind of strange, how there's a sex difference between men and women and how they're affected by the environment. And that my experience is that for some reason, most men tolerate physical challenges better than most women. Most men tolerate emotional issues less capably than women. We are clearly different in many different ways. And so most of my clients are female, not because I choose them, they choose me. And they can't seem to get out of the way of themselves. And they need help, medical on one hand, but really a focus on who they are, and that this will pass. And it does pass if you can get through it. It's kind of like me with that night with a shotgun. I missed, and I've been better ever since. The goal is to keep missing the days when you're fatal to yourself. And everyone can be an instrument of health and well-being to themselves, their family, and to those that they encounter. If they could just stop focusing on themselves. focus on the bigger picture.
So would you say you're almost like a therapist to these people, or like a...
I'm a brother to some. I'm a non-sexual lover to others. I am a guide to many while we're all lost together and trying to find our way out of the woods of ill health, of a system that doesn't seem to be very friendly to them, and of a frustration of not being able to be who they thought they were or could be. And can we cut our way out of that jungle? And my role is I bear a big machete and a persistence that most people could never compete with, whether it be in law or just life in general. I'm really happy with life. I wish I could live to 122. Do you know why? 121 seems too short. I like living. I wish I could live forever. I've seen movies that say how bad that would be, but no, I'd like to live forever at this degree of health. I don't want to live forever if I'm feeling like my deathbed should come to me sooner than later. But to be able to have a role in what's going on here with others that I care about, I would love to live a long, long life.
Yeah. Where do you think your persistence comes from? There's a lot of people listening. I like to talk about entrepreneurship and staying persistent. Is that just something that you have, or did something maybe form that?
I've always been a fighter. I've always been an athlete. I've always been someone who stood up even to my own father, who was kind of hard to deal with sometimes. I appreciate him more now than I ever did. I didn't like him much earlier in life. Military officer, always hard on my mother and on us. But I appreciate him now in ways I couldn't before. I find that the more I get to learn, the more I see how little I know, and that it makes me crave more. I like the thought process. I like inventiveness. I like dealing with my own emotions and others. And I like to know that we're all fighting the same battle, to live as long as we can, as well as we can. And after that, back into the world of energy.
Yeah, it's super interesting, the environmental law kind of field, right? And you talk about DuPont, which reminds me of Dark Waters, one of my favorite movies, which I know it wasn't about you.
Everyone thought it was, but it wasn't.
But it was, your story was pretty close because you went up against DuPont. And one thing that I kind of think is interesting about environmental law is like there could be death threats, right? And you're going up against these huge corporations that would love for you to just disappear. So you're kind of fighting for something, that's bigger than, you're putting your life on the line in a lot of ways. So what motivates you? Is it to do that? Is it just caring about people healing?
I'll tell you a brief story that's true, but I won't name names. But suffice to say, we've all learned that the COVID virus, after first being housed likely in North Carolina, the one that affected so many people, was part of a bioweapons development by the United States, is what I think is the truth. At least that's what I've seen. But a former president decided we need to move that to China and let them take care of it. And it went to a lab in Wuhan. And that organism was, if you study bioweapons, you learn that they have a highly virulent material into which you place the genetics that makes it a bad thing for humanity if they get infected. And someone who took on that case against China was when we were all going through the misery of the COVID process of being isolated and wondering what's going to be our future. He took that case on for Floridians. And I said, what happened? And he said, could never really get service over China. And so I started researching that, and I said, that's just not true. Why don't you tell me the truth? So we met at a wedding once, and he pulled me aside, and he said, Bob, let's put it this way. If you want yourself, your family, and every friend you have to be alive next week, you don't want to do that case. But if you don't mind dying, killing everyone else you know, do that case. We decided we'd rather live. And so there are certain things that have such a magnitude on humanity. Lawyers might be the wrong one to do that. That's called war. That happens. And I find it incredible that we have less concerns about the biological weapons we know how to make than we do about nuclear war. Because I guess you can know who dropped the bomb on you, but who gave you that germ? That's what the nations are doing, and it's scary. And I thought it was probably even worth doing that, even if it might cost my family their lives too, because somebody needs to say no to that. And to know that there are organisms that can just make all of us melt away. And because we're such dumbasses as human beings, we think we're immune from the very things that we're creating to kill everybody. Yes, you can immunize, hence an immunization process that was almost forced on everyone. They were considering using the military to make it happen. I wrote to our government, if you come to my house, you will get a reverse vaccine. I'm not taking it. Yours will be a bullet. And I'm sure I die that day. But don't come to my house. They never did do it as a military means. They still made it all voluntary. But you face a very interesting onslaught of science combined with humanity. And that's what all my cases have been, science and how it can affect us, how it can help us, how it can hurt us. And clients who are in the middle, they got harmed. How do they get out? And so I have the honor of representing many who are trying to get out of the harm, trying to get well again, and trying to figure out how to get well again. And those are all interesting and incredibly enriching experiences to help and see it happen, see them get well again. And sometimes not using normal medical science. So that's been my joy of, as a lawyer, I help problem solving. How does one get out of the injury or illness? Because that to me is the most important thing. Some might say, well, you do that, you've reduced the damages you can get a fee on. Well, that doesn't make any sense to me. I want them all to get well. As a matter of fact, I tell all my clients, if they're listening to this, I tell them in person, your goal is to get well. It will reduce your damages. I just want you well. We'll deal with what happens thereafter. And that's what I want, wellness, and that they can help somebody else now on dealing with the mental process to be well. It's full circle. If we're 99.999% energy, why can't we be well? If the physical part is almost irrelevant.
And have you ever had someone who's like, I don't care about getting well, I just want the money?
No one. Matter of fact, I can say that every single one of my clients said, I don't want $1 if they'll just make me well. I just want to be well. I don't want to have to worry about every place I go making me sick, making me not able to enjoy life. I'll take nothing if they can just say, you're well today. And the really cool thing is most of us have it in our innate mental abilities to make that happen anyway. But we're not taught how to do that. And that's, if I have a mission for most of the rest of my life, it's teaching people how to be well without needing a doctor. It's a mindset.
Yeah, we talked a little about it earlier, how, I saw Dr. Amen, the brain guy, talking about how pain and like something like depression, mental pain and physical pain it's the same like synapses in the brain. And you were telling me about how mindset can actually help people physically heal. And most people listening probably are like, that is BS. You know, I have to take the meds that the doctor gave me and I have to do all this. But you truly feel that mindset is 99.999% of healing.
And it's not a feeling. It's based on scientific fact. I know a doctor worked at a certain health institute. He was a much older man in his 80s while he was functioning as their head of medicine. He was a heart surgeon, a very prominent one, invented many of the procedures for open heart surgery. And he said, you know, I really hate to just be a car repairman, fixing hearts, where people could learn how to never have a damaged heart. And it's not just diet, it's mindset. And he said, when I am forced to do open heart surgery, not a single one of my clients goes home with medicine 2 days after their full open sternum, open heart surgery. They've been taught by me before their surgery how to make the pain not exist. Pain is in your head. Illness is in your head. As a matter of fact, witch doctors, do they ever kill anyone? The person on who they put the hex thinks they're going to die, and they die. Pharmaceutical companies are asking for permission from the FDA to use placebos as medicines, because in their trials, those who thought they were getting medicine got well. Our health is in our brain, and it's learning how to do that makes the difference for most of those who can be well. If you want to destroy someone, tell them how badly sick they're about to get, and they'll believe you. I think one of my goals is to tell my sick clients how well they're going to get, and to not allow them to talk about their negatives once they hire me. We're on a path for wellness, not on a path for money in our pockets. We want to be well, period. And if that's all you can think of, you likely will get well. But another thing that will happen, a jury will believe that you're here for the right reason, to get well.
Yeah, so it's so important for anyone, and probably especially someone sitting in a hospital bed or at rock bottom, to speak positively to yourself, but also have people around you who are positive. And I know they say like one of the biggest longevity factors is people, connections with people. So it's so important, right? Having positive people like around you. If you're not going to talk positive to yourself, someone has to, you know. And
There's actually data on that if you have 7 beloved persons in your life at any stage of your life, you have about a 10 times greater likelihood of being well. Don't dip below 7. We are a human that belongs in community. Those who choose to be alone probably also choose a lonely death.
And I feel like that's kind of the role you fill for people, right? Like you're that one person in their life maybe who's listening and is compassionate and is positive and is forcing them to be positive. You're like, I won't let you talk about negative things. I feel like a lot of people, they don't have someone in their life that will talk to them like you will.
Isn't that sad? Why aren't we trained to do that in school from an early age? That your mindset is what makes you well. And if you can influence others with that mindset, they will get well too. That's why we have a beloved relationship with most doctors. They're trying to help us get well. Many of them are good at showing you your role in getting well. And it's not just putting the medicine in your mouth. It's usually between your 2 ears, like Bobby Jones said. That ground between your 2 ears is the difference between you and being an earthworm. You have a role in your own health and that of everyone around you. You can use it for good health or for bad health, called war, destruction, disease, or good health, coming out and making a successful contribution to what you and your community need. And pretty easy decisions for me, but do I get down? Yes. Do I sometimes feel like giving up? unquestionably. But my nature says that's not allowed. You've got to come back and you have to make a stand for, number one, what's right, meaning justice. But number two, I don't know that I coined this, but I don't know of anyone else that did. Justice heals. If you can put someone on a path to feeling that they are in the right in society, they do better. And whether that be their health or the way they deal with their family, doing right is so important. And so therefore, I know that justice heals.
Yeah, I think a lot of people feel like they've been unjustly treated in one way or another, whether it was by society or ex-boyfriend or God, and they think, well, that's not fair, right? But is life fair, do you think?
Yes. If you chose to do nothing, it's very fair to you. Your outcome won't be very good. You have the ability to use your brain and the body that functions to make a change. If you don't like how it's dealing with you or your community or your family, and you must do it. I just visited a lovely woman last night. She was at a grand opening here a month ago, and she has brain cancer. She's one of my wife's best friends. And all of a sudden, after 5 years of fighting brain cancer, she's now probably dying in the next few days. And I whispered in her ear last night that how much she's loved and that I honor her existence and her lessons. And she no longer has much to say about it. She'll be dying at home. But when we have an ability to use our minds and our mouths and our actions to right wrongs, we make our lives and that of our society better. We have that choice. We have that ability, and we have a community that can help when you can't do it yourself. You just have to speak up and work on it. And that's one of the things that keeps me ticking, quite frankly. I have an ability and a format to make a change for that which is oppressive. We don't deserve to live in oppression. We deserve the freedom of a good life with good food and good water and good associations and governments that aren't killing us, and to speak up about it if they are and do something about it. We have all of that right and ability. And when you do it by yourself, it's a much bigger battle than if you use your voice to have allies and use them. But it's up to you. You can cry about it and say, woe is me, and be punished by doing nothing, or you can do something about it. You have that freedom. Thank God for free will. I had a client who I got very depressed about because I'm virtually certain she committed suicide. And I got depressed because I loved her. I love all my clients, quite frankly. A young woman, 26 years old, very sick. And I spent a lot of time trying to keep her from going down this very bad path mentally. And when I learned she was no longer around, I spoke to somebody that I respect in kind of a functional medicine capacity. And she said, Bob, what is wrong with you? I said, what do you mean what's wrong with me? Nothing's wrong with me. No, you've forgotten basic rules of the universe. What are you talking about? Free will. You didn't cause her to take her life. She did. That's her decision, not yours. You may think you're a powerful man, a loving man, maybe even a great man. We all think of that of you. I said, thanks. But you're wrong. You have no control over someone else's free will. They do what they're doing. You can try to influence it, but it's not your life and it's not your will. And if you failed, you didn't. They did. If they chose death over life, that's their failure, not yours. So don't be so hard on yourself. And that be on an individual basis, a family basis, a community basis, or a nation basis. All you can do is give it your best shot. And if you've done that, you have nothing to feel bad about. And it doesn't need to pull you down the hole with them. I thought that was a good lesson by a shaman.
Yeah, it's interesting. I always try to help everyone around me, family, friends, to the point where I'm almost putting that in front of my own, best interests. But it's really better to focus on our own well-being, right? And then that kind of reflects into people around us.
Well, you definitely have to treat yourself well. Treat it with purpose. But sometimes one of the best things you can do for yourself is to stop looking at yourself and start looking at everyone else. And as soon as you're not focused on you, you can actually effectuate something that helps you, and you didn't even know that it would. Even with these mold cases and chemistries and whatnot that can bring us harm, you can talk about what process to go through for your own well-being. But as soon as you start focusing, like I do on my clients, I get better because they're getting better. And that's why I say the community role as a human being is so important. We need to focus on our community to make it healthy mentally and physically, and to focus on how we can help each other. Because just like a good knot, two pieces of string tied a certain way gets stronger than the first string that made the first move. And we can do that with each other in creating a fabric that just won't tear. And if we do that, we're making each other stronger and better.
And one of the most impactful things that I've learned from you, and you said you love your clients, and I think you said before you love everyone, or I remember we were sitting at a bar in Texas, and I think you told the server you loved her, and like you have this love for everyone almost, right?
Most. There's some I hate. They're called my opponents, who want to damage my clients. Can they be somebody I love? Not in that circumstance. But those who are not standing in the way of freedom and health, I would always love them. Those who do need a drastic punishment, as far as I'm concerned. I believe in punishment as a trainer or to end it, one or the other.
Yeah, and a lot of people are scared to love, right? Because if you lose that thing that you love, it can be hurtful, painful, right?
Well, that's where my growth has been, that this body is only part of my existence. And I'm not talking about God or Jesus or Yahweh or whoever you want to talk about. I'm talking about physics. Matter is neither created nor destroyed. It just takes different form. You can go to just pure science without even talking religion. And so I believe that we have been here and always will be here ourselves, but maybe not visible, and certainly not in this form. And that existence in the universe always goes on. The question is, can you do something in this physical form that helps those who are just like you? We are all so similar. Black, white, yellow, male, female, we are all so similar. And if we serve a united purpose, we do so much better together. I think the science shows that hermits don't do very well. They typically are miserable personalities that die younger than everybody else. And if we work together, we can grow to good old age and still be relatively healthy. And so I don't know that anyone wants to live forever. Usually I do, but I think it's probably a bad idea because we all do wear down. And I just want it to be a little better than before I was here. And if I can do that with my kids, my wife, my friends, my clients, then we've created a community that helps build the rest of the community. And that's what's important to me. A community of people that care for each other, that can say, I love you, male or female, and it's not taken as some sort of sexual assault. It's, I truly love you. I think you're a wonderful person. I'm glad you're in my life. I'd love to give you a hug. I want to help you. Can you help me? And be able to have that reciprocity because of the human affection that exists between us.
Yeah, and I see you've almost mastered this mindset of kind of helping people or being able to bring them to a healing place.
Far from mastered. In that same mind that I have, I just as soon behead some of them. Literally. I guess I shouldn't say that and announce it. But no, I get very angry at what happens to people. It shouldn't happen. And what's my role? It's very hard not to act out when someone's being harmed by someone else on purpose, for example, and the law just doesn't really help them. At what point do you step in? And so there are times in my mindset that I'm not very good as a human being in what I'm thinking I should be doing, because unfortunately some people intentionally or with great negligence harm others. That shouldn't happen. And that's probably why I'm a lawyer. I fight those fights. But I'd rather be a healer, probably first. And that's not that I'm a doctor. It's that I cause those who hear me to learn the process of healing themselves. And that's in every one of our capacities, to learn how to heal yourself. Am I healed all the time? No. Am I angry as hell sometimes? Yes. Do I sometimes feel homicidal? Yes. Would I ever act on it? Maybe not. But
Let's say not.
I would hope not. I would hope not. Unless they really had to have that happen to them. Such as a war, such as a personal assault that was threatening me or my family. It may have to come to that. I would hope that I would never be put in that position. But my clients should not be harmed by someone else on purpose. Period. Makes me angry as hell. And so my life isn't sweetness and kindness. It is fighting battles for those who need help. And sometimes I need help to not go over the edge. And my clients do that for me more than you might imagine.
Yeah, so don't mess with Bob, guys, or his family, or his clients.
True.
But so I know you have a passion for helping people, and I like to talk about pursuing passion, and I sometimes wonder what's the best way, because I had a similar passion, and mine started really weird, kind of with like the mold testing. Like first it was just the basic mold testing, right? And then I started to learn mold assessment, moisture, but I started to learn like I'm helping people heal physically, but I also learned that I was kind of like the therapist or the mentor or the coach. In a lot of ways, these people were scared, they couldn't make the next move. So I started to feel that role, that I was really impacting the community. The law, similar. I went to law school, became an attorney, similar. But now I wonder, should I go to med school? Should I go to become a therapist? Like, what's the best way to help people really? And I know you're entering a new chapter, right? In some ways, getting away from lawyering, and you've got this beautiful living sculpture sanctuary, which in South Florida, if you don't know about it, this is a healing, amazing place. You could see the Chiefs Lounge we're in, but what do you think? I mean, how are you helping people in this next chapter? How are you sort of manifesting that?
I think my greatest awakening in the last decade or so is this belief in physics that we are energy beings first, that somehow got put into a body that won't last permanently. And so while in this body, what can we most do to effectuate something that, number one, helps preserve ourselves, and number two, is of benefit to our community? And without talking about the altruistic words like love or hate or whatnot, first it's survival, then survival with dignity and maybe happiness, I love our founding fathers who didn't say that we're entitled to happiness, only to the pursuit of happiness. I thought that was genius, if you think about it. Being able to pursue happiness, which is a fleeting thing that comes and goes. And so I am challenged constantly by what is best for my family and my community. And it's very hard to deal with the things that harm people because it's such a disconnect from where you want to be. And that humans can be so hard on other humans in a hurtful way is sometimes incomprehensible. Although admittedly, in self-defense, I've considered doing something nasty to someone else, but normally didn't have to ever go that route. So the reality is I find that working on energy is the best place for most minds to be. Energy that's positive. There's always tear down energy, the kind that hurts, the kind that damages, the kind that destroys. But positive energy is something that builds, whether it be a person's psyche, their body constituency, their families, or their community. If I'm working for a positive energy, I feel I'm doing my job here. Negative energy is what I would fight. I come from a military family. I've seen the worst of fighting through my father's eyes and his stories of 3 wars and what we've done to each other over time, whether it be incinerating people alive in concentration camps or machine gunning them or bombing them, catching them on fire with napalm, all the things we've horrifically done to each other when that person could have been your brother. And it's kind of disturbing what we do to ourselves. But I focus on the good. I focus on how can my clients get well? How can my family feel protected? How can I feel competent? Competency is very important to me. How can I contribute? What can I give? Not what do I need to give. What can I give? And how far can I stretch myself? And I find the more you give and work, the more you can stretch it. And that's the amazing thing, even with higher education. You graduate from high school, you feel pretty good about yourself. Then you hit college and you're doing those same textbooks in only half a year. And then when you finish that school, and if you went to law school or to medical school, you're finishing that in a semester. And you have 14 of them rather than 5 of them, and so on and so forth. You tend to be able to expand your brain ever increasingly so. But most of us stop expanding our brains at college and then have your family life and you're never challenging yourself again. And that's unfortunate. We should be always finding a way to challenge ourselves to do more for our family and for our communities. If we did that, we'd live a much better life, I think. And that's what I try to do, even though it gets fatiguing sometimes. Now that I'm approaching 70, I'm hoping for 122. But my goal now is I've fought people for 35 years, and now I want to help heal people for whatever that remaining time is. And that's not as a doctor, that's as someone who can help them learn to use that 99.999997% of their person that is pure energy, and to participate with that. It's kind of cool.
Very cool. And so how do you mentor someone into fixing their energy? I mean, especially someone who's just was diagnosed with something, or it seems irreversible, really bad place, and it helps to have positive people around you. But what if you don't have that?
Well, it's kind of interesting. I've been learning various sorts of healing processes of the mind. And when I do it, I have comments like, did it right here in this chair many times. I hear like, today was the first day I didn't feel sick. And all I was doing is traveling with them in their brains. And they didn't feel ill. Well, you can learn how to do that. And so I try to teach that kind of mental healing, energy healing. And it is something that can be taught and learned. There's a pretty famous fella who was a physician, and he became in an accident a quadriplegic. Couldn't feel from his waist down because his spinal column was severed. They haven't figured a way to reattach those nerves yet. And he said no doctor was helping him, and he was paralyzed from the waist down. And I'm paraphrasing, but this is a guy named Joe Dispenza. He's a well-spoken person in the meditation world, but he said it took me several weeks to learn how to meditate. And then I used focused meditation on healing my spinal nerve. And in less than half a year, he was riding his bike again. They call it a miracle. He says it's focused healing. And he's a spokesperson on how you have the power in your brain to effectuate great change, including health and other things. And there's so many bits of evidence that show that that's the case. And so that's what I wanted to learn more about. I think it's a life of education to learn and to focus on that. But we all know that a positive outlook usually ends up with positive outcomes. It's the same with your health. And the amazing thing is it's also the same with others' health. There's actually a published study, I think it was done in Israel, of a doctor who got a cohort of people, a large cohort of people, to deal with people that have severe stenosis, probably likely to lead to their deaths, an overwhelming destruction of their core being, basically, and being able to move and to think and whatnot. And one group of people was to think nothing but positive thoughts for those people. And another cohort of many, many hundreds of the same kind of injured folks that were given negative energy. And you think, well, I don't know how this story is going to end. The one that got positive energy did better than, that's true, by like 38%. But then you learn the full facts. The ones they were giving the energy to had died 2 generations earlier in World War I.
So negative energy.
And the positive energy. The outcome came from the future to those who were dealing with all that pain.
Explain that again. There's people, and then their ancestors were in a world war.
Not their ancestors, their cohort of people they were given the negative or the positive energy to were already dead 2 generations before in World War I. And in the 1980s, his scientists divided them up and had one group send positive energy without knowing who they're sending it to. And that outcome happened. And that's just another example of quantum existence, that the past, the present, and the future may already have happened. And we tap into it where we are in this time of life, but that you can have a role in your descendants' outcome that's not just genetic, that you can actually change their lives and they haven't been born yet, and that you can change what happened to your ancestors by what you do today. And that it shows that it's energy we exist in, and that time is irrelevant. That time really doesn't even exist. We're always in an existence of the spirits of existence. It's really, there's a lot of science in that area, and it really just shows you have the ability to do amazing things if you can keep focused as if it is real. Not that it may be real or could be real, that it is real. And when you can do that, you make huge change in your existence and those around you. And if you can teach people how to do that, wow, what an outcome you're having.
Yeah, and so you have thousands of plants here at the sanctuary. Do you talk nicely to your plants? I know you love your plants.
My plants are my family. They have their own. I was going to use the word soul, but I don't believe in a soul. I believe in a spirit. They have their own spirit, and they are critically important to us, because without plants, we're all dead. They create our oxygen. And so my plants are a very critical aspect of my existence. I actually tell a story about my desert roses. They look like little fat sumo wrestlers, and they come from Yemen, Saudi Arabia, the periphery of the Sahara Desert. And I have a little story that I tell everybody, and that is, once there was a young man in a remote village, and marauders came to the village, and the village bell tolled, and everyone knows that's an attack. So he would get his spear and his sword and his shield and come, and was invincible throughout his life. And then eventually, as an older man, now in his waning years, the bells were ringing, and this time it was a much bigger force, and they fought all day long into the night. And just as the tide was turning in their favor, a spear went from behind him through his rib cage and impaled him on a tree, and his horse ran off without him as he hung from a tree with a spear holding him up, unable to touch the ground or to run. And everyone seeing him fled, because he was their leader, their soul, their spirit. And as the darkness came in, and the mists of the night, the chilling air, the groans of others wounded and dying on that battlefield all around him, a little old lady in a hooded outfit came up and looked up into his face. And she said, "I can help you." And he said, "How can you possibly help me? Everyone has abandoned me. I've lived my life for this community, and they've all fled and left me here. I can help you live forever if you just believe in me." And he looked up. A tear came down his face. "That's what I want." And he disappeared forever, with no more suffering, but was embodied in the desert rose. Ugly to look at first, but with amazing flowers each season. And they have the capacity to live forever. And his soul went into every desert rose that I grow. And that's my idea of living forever. We change form, but not our ideal. And all he wanted to be was uplifting to those that surrounded him. And that's what he sought, and that's what he got. And so, on the one hand, always remember, ask for everything in your request. I'm sure he didn't want to be a desert rose, but he had this amazing life that would be forever, glowing in flowers, growing in the year, and tough as nails throughout the rest of the year. And we all need to be more like the desert rose, having the ability to drop our leaves and suffer consequences, the ability to flower gloriously, and then to grow in ways that are contorted and twisting, but surrounding all that we encounter with our very intriguing body shapes that we all have, quite frankly. So I love my desert roses. My plants are my family, and I suffer with them when they suffer. And they probably suffer with me when I suffer.
Yeah, and they say if you yell and curse at a plant, it'll actually die.
Well, they now know, they discovered last year, plants actually have voice. And they actually give signals through their voice as to whether they are ripe to be attacked or to be healed. And so when you cut through that head of lettuce, just if you could hear it, you would hear it screaming that you're cutting it in half. Makes you think what you should be eating, actually. But we won't get into vegetarianism or whatnot here.
Yeah, it's going to make the vegans think twice now. But interesting how with people, like, you may not think, oh, all this positivity can help me heal, but it can. Like, if you're speaking negative to yourself, it's going to harm you. And maybe it won't fix every illness you have, but imagine how much better you'll feel if you're positive, speaking positive. You believe you can heal.
Oh, there's no question. You will die if you think nothing but negative thoughts about your health. You will have guaranteed your outcome. That's why being positive and upbeat is so important. That's why as a lawyer, I'm always upbeat to my clients 99.99% of the time. And when I'm down, they bring me up. But we have to learn that our positivity changes our environment. And I believe that if you learn how to use that energy, it's far greater than your muscles could ever be, and much more infectious. Talk about illness, infectiousness of goodness is a very powerful tool. And I dare say we probably would not have wars if we'd have more infectivity of goodness, because then we'd all wake up and do what I think should happen with war. The 12 leaders that decided it all get to fight each other. Whoever wins gets the spoils. You'd never have a war if the leaders had to fight. Of course, they used to in the old days, but nowadays, you'd probably never have a war if everyone in your Congress and your leadership had to fight the opponent and no one else. There would be no wars.
A lot of those guys are not in shape for fighting.
And even if they were, they're really not usually willing to take death for an outcome of where they can build their house.
And it starts with each person, right? I know you said one person can make a big change, right?
Unquestionably. It's throughout time we see one person, positive or negative, big change. What's the world without Hitler? What's the world without Muhammad? What's the world without Jesus? What's the world without Moses? Just one person. Whether you believe they have godly qualities or not, it's a person. What do you say about the inventor of the vaccine? Or what do you say about the inventor of the television? Of all sorts of things that one person thought of. We have the ability to effectuate incredible change and dynamic change and useful change and harmful change, some of which you can't even conceive it could arise from it. I once had a case where I was seeking funding for the ability to put cannabinoid chemistry into a form that would allow it to get past the blood-brain barrier for healing of brains damaged by trauma. Thought it was a wonderful concept. I went to a funder in another country, and without knowing anything about my invention, he says, "You're talking to the wrong person. You should be talking to your military. Because if you have that ability to take an organic molecule and make it soluble in water, you've just guaranteed the death of billions of people. Because they can do it with anthrax then too, right? And they can send it with water droplets over entire populations. And your invention did it. I'm not funding that. Not a chance in the world. Go talk to your military." I said, never even thought of that. That truly is something that I could be used for. And I had no concept. And so just getting an outside view of something that I thought would be positive for helping people like firefighters and whatnot who had severe injury from inhaling inflammatory substances. Imagine, put it in cocaine, you can cut it by 1/100th, and it would have the same effect. But what if it didn't get cut by 100? You just murdered a bunch of people with cocaine, overdose to death. And so the consequences of invention are really kind of cool. And so we have to be aware of the whole community of what our actions do. But I think if you are always on the side of health and well-being, you can live with yourself. When that day comes where you finally close your eyes, like my friend last night that I was visiting probably has finally closed her eyes for the last time. And if you have that last thought, you can say, I loved and I was good for something. That's probably satisfying enough for me.
I'm sure she heard you last night and appreciated your words. But yeah, love is so important, and I like how you talk about getting that outside opinion, right? Like you talk to someone about your idea, and that's kind of like mentorship, right? Is going to other people for an opinion, and you might not like what they have to say, or you might say, wow, and that's helpful. And have you had a lot of mentors or sought mentors, or are you mostly, well, I'm the guy that's gonna...
I had a very prominent lawyer, and in this format, I won't name him, but he was my mentor. He was a generation older than me. He's famous in various jurisprudence in Florida. Originally as a defense lawyer, eventually as a plaintiff's lawyer. And he was my mentor. He, for some reason, liked to be in my cases, even if he wasn't going to get paid. And he's in a lot of very prominent Florida cases. And I always loved to have him around. Always hated to have to pay him because he would never say what he wanted. He would only say, pay me what you think I was worth. God, that's a hard one. And so I think I always overpaid him. But he gave me great insight because one day, I was probably 48 maybe, I had great success against DuPont and against Mckee and BASF and other chemical companies because that's mainly what I did back then. And I said I was going to retire. He said, very straight-faced, I think he's still alive. Yeah, really old, but still alive. But very straight-faced. He said, then you can't be my friend anymore. I said, what are you talking about? You would be so disappointing to me if you quit at such an early age. You have the ability to effectuate great change in our society, and you're quitting? I don't want you even as my friend. And I said, I almost named her there. I said, what are you talking about? He said, very few people have abilities to communicate like you do. Very few people have a heart like you. Very few people have a fighter like you. And you'd be an embarrassment to me if you quit. I thought the world of this man, and enough that I've still not quit. And he taught me a lesson, that the world isn't about me. It's about those who I can influence and who I can make maybe a little safer and live a little longer in good health and learn how to fight a fight and learn that together we're better than alone. Those are the things that I like about life. So I love that I have a second family with young kids who somehow like me, no matter how crusty I can be, and a wife who loves me, even though I'm really crusty with her sometimes. But the reality is we have more than ourselves to live this life for. And if we didn't, would we be sitting here right now? No. I got things I can do with my time. But no, we live in a community. We're made as a community. We live longer in a community. Humanity is known for a long time. Have allies. You can fight battles better. Have allies. You can make more food. Have allies. You can overcome almost anything. The one thing none of us ever gets out of is death, but that's false too. We never actually die if you believe that you're more than this body. And your own cells tell you that. They are 99.999997% energy that never goes away. And so we have a lot to offer and a lot more to offer in community. We have a lot more to offer in friendship and family. And we have the ability to effectuate better understanding, and positive change. Negative change is called war. Hate the thought of war. Killing a bunch of people that never had any offense against you, except their leaders. Is there a purpose for war? Yes, I will not be run by a totalitarian, period. I'll go to war. You want to vaccinate me and my family without my permission? I'll go to war. You're not taking my life into your hands. That's my decision making, my free will, my family's free will. You want to hurt my friends? You will pay a price. Even war. You want to damage my children with war? You will be fought. So I find a place for war and for penalty and punishment. The concept of war is very personal. How many times have you intentionally burned yourself on a frying pan?
Intentionally? Probably 0.
Probably once, the first time. You never did it again. That's the benefit of war. You never want it to happen again. Don't. It's so damaging. And so if we could all individually understand, killing ourselves in war is like burning yourself more than once in a frying pan. It's just stupid. Learn not to get into that position. How about that?
Yeah, I've thought a lot about war in a lot of ways. Like people are out there fighting right now, war, and we're here complaining about, oh, my car is too expensive to maintain. Or, there's people fighting for their lives. And I've been inspired by people I went to high school with that went overseas to go fight these wars. And I kind of took the mindset, I really did, of, in workouts, for example, like I'm going to pretend I got a drill sergeant yelling at me and I'm going to get discharged. But I really went to war with myself. And do you feel like people have to do that to change? Kind of like you're going to war with yourself?
Sometimes, yeah. My father was a high-level ranking Air Force officer and fought in 3 wars. And he would never talk about his wartime experience. And I learned he was a hero in World War II, fighting with his Spitfire as for the bombers going to Europe out of England. And he never spoke about it. And in the few times he would ever talk about it, I can remember a couple sentences out of his mouth. I kill people on purpose to make you safe. Period. That was my father. That's my job. And me and my teams always did it well. And my father was a hard ass. And he truly believed we're only safe because of our military. Because others will take us out if we let them, as happened so many times in Europe. But we need those kinds of heroes to fight those battles that can stomach being constantly in fear of dying and yet somehow overcoming it and doing their jobs for us. But we have that same obligation as people, that no one is going to push us around on the issues of safety, of quality of life, of the freedom to speak, the freedom to be free of oppression from a government. Those are things that our Constitution guarantees, but for a reason, with the cost of hundreds of thousands of lives to be free that way. And sometimes you have to fight it with a life. You have to fight it with your words. You sometimes have to fight it with your body or with your children's lives or whatever it might be. But we get stronger from adversity. Never being in an adverse situation makes us weak. So it's good that we're challenged constantly. But for me, the freedom to choose health and the freedom to not be harmed by others are 2 really critical freedoms that I'm willing to fight for, certainly willing to speak for, but definitely willing to fight for. And that's kind of why I choose to do what I'm doing. I fight usually corporate America on their concepts of what's good for us, which oftentimes harms us because they, I believe, live under the credo that if we harm fewer than would have been harmed otherwise, we've done a service. I can actually see that perspective. If their invention is going to kill 13,000 people next year, but the invention saved 1 million, they've actually done something good. But the bad news is, from me, they'll pay for the 13,000 that got killed, because my job is to protect those that shouldn't have been killed. But corporate America truly, a corporate world truly believes that there's a dissonance between what's good for humanity and what's good for a man. If global warming caused by human industrialism causes us to lose most of our coastal cities and cause millions of deaths, did they cause us a favor by moving us further inland and modernizing it all? That's what they believe. And that's what those who can bring harm to many people say, but it was better for the majority. Unfortunately, majority rule, although our elections run on it, that's not what humanity should be running on, in my opinion. And so I look out for the ones that are pushed around by those who can do the pushing. And I know how to push back using the law. But using concepts of what's right and wrong and what is human and humane, those are things far different than the law. And those are things that people live and die for. And so we get to fight these battles in courtrooms, but we also get to fight them when we deal with their lives in recovering from injury caused by others and in bad choices by themselves sometimes, whether it be a family member or your client. We have an obligation to speak up. Those who have learned how to use their minds and their words. Someone once said to me that if you look back at time, the leaders could all speak. I feel bad for those who can't speak or communicate. But those who've learned to have compelling speech have led the world, always. And if, as I tell my kids, if you can't look me in the eyes, don't even say the words. Learn to enter my brain through my eyes and then speak. And that's what I think they've learned. They're pretty good at it. They're very convincing. And we have that ability to go inside of another's brain, whether it be one or many hundreds of thousands, and lead them. Hopefully you've taught yourself well enough to be a leader.
Yeah, you're an impactful guy, and just looking into your eyes is like, I could tell you're seeing into my brain, and your wife is the same way. But eye contact is so powerful, and speech. I think even without the speech, the eye contact and just body language is so powerful, right? Like you can look into someone's eyes and have a whole conversation with them. And I saw something interesting yesterday, like telepathy is real. Most people just haven't opened their heart up enough to have that telepathy. I feel like we're having a whole conversation just with our eyes. But
how would a man lead thousands into battle? He didn't speak to most of them. And they're not doing it because they're going to get shot for treason. They're doing it because of leadership. And hopefully each gets blessed with the opportunity to lead. Leadership is meaning someone else is following. And why would they follow? I was listening to some interesting discussion on the workplace and why people do what they do. And your boss tells you what you have to do. Your leader, you do because you want him happy with what you're doing. And there's a big difference between a boss and a leader. Those who follow you because you lead follow you out of love for you. Those who follow you because you order them, they just as soon walk past your dead body, so long as you didn't disrupt their paycheck. And that's what we should all be striving for, the ability to lead, to be loved and followed, and to have the courage to lead.
yeah, I feel like we could talk for a long time about this stuff, and I know we're coming closer probably to the end. This will be a longer episode. I'm sure our wonderful crew will let us know when there's maybe 5 or 10 minutes left. But I want to talk about, we talked a little about the climate change and the sea level rise, and that's kind of where I started, and I think we've got about 5 minutes left. So I studied climate change, air pollution, all that. Then I got into mold testing, and now I find myself as mold lawyer online and this kind of indoor environmental law field. I know we could talk about mold for hours, but mold's been used as a biological weapon, right?
Yes.
From what I know.
Trichothecene chemistries used by the Khmer Rouge.
Yeah, and that's fascinating. That's a whole episode right there. But why is mold? I know you focus on mold cases now.
Almost all.
And what got you into mold cases? And then why is mold right now so, like, I know most people are dealing with mold. They might not know it, but every building tends to have some mold. But why is mold now kind of such a thing?
Mold and fungi, if you were to ascribe a human purpose to them, they certainly don't have that because they're not human, is to consume all organic matter. We're organic matter. But we're alive, so most fungi do not attack living cells. They're external to it, and they wait for it to die, and then they consume it for their own food. There are, I think, literally millions of types of fungi, some of which are quite beneficial to us. I'm sure you've enjoyed some delicious mushrooms from time to time. But their goal is they don't have a goal. Their usefulness to us is they consume everything that's organic and break it down so that we don't have 1.5 miles high of organic detritus that never rotted. Their role is rot. But they produce potent chemistries. And so we're so used to them being helpful that we have never really paid attention to how harmful they can be, especially certain species. And so in an indoor moist environment, which is where they thrive, that assault on our immune systems can be devastating to a large segment of population. I'd say 20 to 30% of humanity is damaged by exposure long-term to mold. And so how do you deal with that since it's everywhere? Well, the key is to make sure your environment is below 60% humidity. If you've done that, it's probably a safe environment for you.
Or even 50%. I see.
Better, even lower. Yeah. But below 50, it starts to get too dry. Your nasal system doesn't like it very much. So you want to have that happy balance where you're not really growing mold. But it's all over the place outside, so you're never devoid of being exposed to it. The problem is indoors with metabolically active high levels of mold, those who are susceptible, 20 to 30% of the human population, have a very bad outcome. And so there's a lot of increasing research into the area that many are saying that some of the diseases that we just thought was genetic or whatnot are actually mold-based illnesses, such things as MS, lupus, even certain aspects of heart disease, so on and so forth. And if you knew that it was mold that was giving you the precursor startups of those illnesses, Alzheimer's, dementia, that you would avoid it like a plague. But because it's all around us, everyone says, that's normal. I once did a seminar and some Jamaican guy said, man, in Jamaica, we don't even have windows. It's green in our windowsills. What are you talking about? Mold's harmful. I said, you don't have windows? You just solved your problem. It's sealing it up. That's the problem. And so we have so many things that this living microbe and its excretory products can cause severe damage to us, and especially those who are genetically susceptible to it. And some are more than others. And so it's highly variable, and what we have to do is avoid those circumstances. Make facilities that don't have these higher levels of molds that are known to cause damage to the human genome, cancers, neurological disorders. Now, finally, the government is putting those sorts of things in what mold can cause. And if you get down to it, since it's immunology based, it can affect every organ system of the body. It just hasn't been studied. And so those studies are now happening. And so the key is keep a relatively dry indoor environment, and you probably don't ever have a problem.
Dry and clean.
Yeah.
Clean air, clean surfaces,
Dry and clean. And if you do that, you're fine. And that's the obligation of a landlord, of a property owner. And if they don't do it, they can be liable for it. And it can cause incredibly bad circumstances, all the way to death, anaphylaxis, death.
And I know we don't have a lot of time. I have two quick questions, but I think any mold could be harmful because it's a living organism, right? Producing these, I say any mold could be harmful.
Well, you have an immune system that reacts to spores.
At a certain level, I think any of these decomposing fungi could be harmful. But I know you want to talk a little about what you recommend people to do in mold. And then I kind of want to leave like a mentorship mantra. But what do you, short version of what do you recommend people do?
Well, first of all, don't be afraid of simple testing regimens. An indoor relative humidity below 55% is what you want. If your air conditioning system isn't doing it, it's not functioning properly because that's what they're designed for. Fix it. Change it. Keep your filters clean. By the way, the filters aren't because of mold. The filters are to avoid harm to your air conditioning system. But those filters will increase the level of humidity that's happening because it's not properly removing the moisture and it's cycling too fast, and your air conditioning system just doesn't do it. And so you have to maintain those systems. If you have, and your relative humidity is below 55%, you probably will never have a mold problem in your house. If you do, you have to have it cleaned professionally immediately and stop that occurrence. So if you're a landlord and that's happening, you need to fix it. If you're a tenant or a homeowner or a home leaser, you need to make sure to have that basic test. And it's just a little hygrometer. It's easy to test for. And so if you've done that, you're probably never going to be bothered by harmful levels of mold. But once you reach over 60% and you have spores that are literally growing in your closet, you have a microbiological soup that can be very dangerous for you. And it can cause you misery and death.
Yeah. So humidity and then water damage, of course, can cause mold. Moisture in general.
Liquid water and gaseous humidity can cause mold growth.
And I tell people in Florida, be careful, because even if your humidity is in range, it might be because your AC is doing all the work. Now your AC is filled with moisture. So I tell people use dehumidifiers plus your AC. Keep the AC dry so it doesn't start spewing out soup.
A properly designed and installed and maintained HVAC system would never require a separate water removal system. But if you have one that's not working, then put in the equipment to dry the air.
Yeah. And I think it's a good measure, a dehumidifier, but
it's noisy. That's the only problem.
Yeah. And they put off heat, but we can get into more of that. But so we're running out of time, but I like to leave people with like a mentorship mantra. And I kind of want to aim it towards those people that are in a hopeless place. And what's just kind of a golden tidbit you could say to someone who they're probably having a hard time just talking positivity or thinking anything positive is possible.
Mold related or anything?
Anything. Mold is a specific example because people have the mold hold. Mold makes it hard for people to be positive, I think. So it could be mold related.
You are the protector of your own life. Don't depend on anyone else. You can change your circumstances. Unless you're a coward. You have the obligation to protect your family and your friends from harmful conditions. You have the power to do it. You just have to be creative. Don't depend on anyone else unless they're your allies. Make friends with those of like purpose. And for God's sake, don't ever give up. You can find a safe place, and you can make that safe place with not a whole lot of money invested into it. Don't blame anyone else. Do what's right. Protect yourself and your family from the harms that the environment can bring you. If it was raining bullets, would you get out of the rain? It's the same thing with mold spores. It's the same thing with bad people. You can avoid them. Get out of the harmful rain.
That's awesome. And yeah, so thank you again. I mean, you've been one of the most impactful, interesting people that I've known. I consider you a mentor and a friend. And
boy, are you in trouble.
And so you've got the Mckee Law Group, right?
Yep.
And the Living Sculpture Sanctuary here in Davie. And if you guys don't know this guy, you got to get to know him. Check out this sanctuary. If you need an attorney, I mean, I hope you can get with Bob.
The key is to protect yourself, your loved ones, and your human family from harm. And we can do that together. That's all. Don't have to fight lawsuits. Just change your environment. Change who you hang out with. Change who wants to do positive things and who have positive energy that you can feel. And if they're your friends, you'll be doing great. That's what we do.
Well, Bob, I love you. Thank you
Love
for
you too,
doing
man.
the podcast. We'll do more. Appreciate it.
Thank you.